They call him the executioner of Wall Street, a man who buys companies just to tear them apart. I was the undercover journalist sent to expose his darkest secrets, working as his low-level personal assistant. I thought I was the one playing him, but on a rainy night in his private jet he pinned me against the seat and threw my recording device on the floor. He didn't fire me. He didn't call the police. He leaned in, his eyes burning with a terrifying obsession, and whispered, "I've known who you were since the moment you stepped into my lobby, Clara. You wanted a story? I'll give you one. But it ends with you wearing my ring and carrying my name. Now pick up the pen and sign the life you knew away. My name is Clara, and I'm about to become the plaything of the man I was supposed to destroy. This is a story of betrayal, obsession, and a love that is more dangerous than any secret. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. In the world of high finance, information is the only currency that matters. And Alistair Thorne had more of it than anyone else. I had spent 3 months carefully crafting my fake identity, scrubbing my social media, and learning how to bow my head just enough to look like a submissive, hard-working assistant. I needed the truth. My father's company hadn't just gone bankrupt. Alistair Thorne had hunted it down like a wolf. I wanted to see him bleed ink in headlines. The Thorne Tower was a needle of black glass in the heart of the city. Walking into it felt like walking into a cold, clinical future. Everything was silent, polished, and intimidating. "Mr. Thorne will see you now," the head secretary said, her voice devoid of emotion. I straightened my cheap blazer, adjusted my hidden camera pin, and walked into the lion's den. Alistair Thorne was sitting behind a desk made of solid obsidian. He didn't look up. He was a man of sharp angles. A jawline that could cut glass, shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of the world, and hair as dark as his reputation. "The coffee is cold, Clara," he said. His voice was a deep, resonant rumble that seemed to vibrate in the very floorboards. "I'll get you another, sir," I whispered, keeping my eyes on my shoes. "Don't bother," he said, finally looking up. His eyes were a piercing, icy blue, the kind of blue that felt like it was reading the fine print of my soul. "I don't hire assistants for their coffee. I hire them for their discretion. Tell me, Clara, are you a discreet woman?" "I know how to keep a secret, Mr. Thorne," I said, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm. He stood up, and the sheer scale of him was terrifying. He moved with a slow, predatory confidence. He walked around the desk, stopping just inches from me. I could smell the expensive tobacco and the scent of the sea on his skin. He reached out and straightened my collar, his fingers grazing my neck. The touch was electric, making every hair on my body stand up. "Good," he whispered. "Because starting today you aren't just an assistant. You are my shadow. You go where I go. You see what I see. And if a single word of what happens in this office leaves these walls, I won't just fire you. I'll erase you." He handed me a folder. "We're leaving for Singapore in 2 hours. Pack a bag. Something expensive. I can't have my shadow looking like she shops in a bargain bin." As I left the office, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was in. I was the shadow. I was going to see the deals, the bribes, and the betrayals. But as I walked to the elevator, I couldn't shake the feeling that his eyes were still on me, watching through the glass walls, seeing the journalist beneath the blazer. The flight was my first taste of Alistair's world. Private jets, vintage wine, and a silence that was louder than a scream. He sat across from me, working on a laptop, the light reflecting off his sharp features. He didn't speak to me for 4 hours. He treated me like a piece of furniture until the turbulence hit. The plane jolted violently and I gasped, my hand flying to my chest. Alistair didn't flinch. He simply reached out and grabbed my hand, his grip like a vice. "Fear is a waste of energy, Clara," he said, his eyes locked onto mine. "The plane isn't going down. I don't allow my things to break." "I'm not one of your things," I snapped, the fear making me forget my role for a second. His grip tightened, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flash of something dark and hungry in his expression. "Everyone is someone's thing, Clara. You just haven't realized who you belong to yet. He let go of my hand, but the heat of his touch lingered long after the turbulence stopped. I realized then that Alistair Thorne wasn't just a billionaire I was investigating. He was a force of nature. And as we descended into the humid night of Singapore, I knew that the story I was writing was quickly turning into a trap, and I was the one walking right into the center of it. The game of cat and mouse has begun. Clara thinks she's the hunter, but Alistair Thorne is a man who never loses. If you love this high-stakes tension and dark obsession, please subscribe to English Story with Masha and hit that like button. Comment shadow if you think Alaric already knows she's a journalist. We are moving into where the first secret is revealed in a luxury hotel room. The humidity of Singapore hit me like a wall the moment we stepped off the jet, but it was nothing compared to the heat of Alistair's presence. We were whisked away in a silver Rolls-Royce to a hotel that defied gravity. A shimmering tower with an infinity pool that seemed to spill into the clouds. "One suite, Mr. Thorne?" the concierge asked, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched the marble. "One suite," Alistair confirmed, his voice as cold as the air conditioning. "And send up the stylist I requested. My assistant needs to be transformed for tonight's gala." The doors to the penthouse suite clicked shut and I spun around to face him. "One suite, Alistair? My contract said I'd have my own quarters. I can't do my job if I'm sleeping 10 feet away from you." He slowly unbuttoned his suit jacket, tossing it onto a velvet chair. He walked toward me, his steps slow and deliberate, until I was backed against the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the glowing harbor. "Your job, Clara, is whatever I say it is," he said, leaning in so close I could see the flecks of silver in his icy blue eyes. "Tonight we are meeting with Julian Vane. He's a man who values family and stability. He won't sign the merger with a bachelor who spends his nights with a different woman every week. He wants to see a man who has been tamed. So for the next 6 hours you aren't my assistant. You are my fiancé." "I am a journalist." I stopped, the word catching in my throat. My heart stopped. Had I just said it? Alistair's smirk didn't reach his eyes. "A journalist? Is that what you were going to say? I thought you were a low-level assistant with a resume from a defunct tech firm." He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw with a terrifying tenderness. "Don't look so shocked, Clara. I knew who you were before you even walked into the Thorne Tower. I knew about your father's company. I knew about the articles you wrote under a pseudonym. I let you in because I wanted to see how far you'd go to get your story." I felt the world tilt. My disguise was a joke. I was a mouse playing in a lion's den, and the lion had been amused the whole time. "If you knew," I whispered, my voice trembling, "why bring me here? Why haven't you ruined me?" "Because," he said, his voice dropping to a low, possessive hum, "you're the first thing in years that I haven't been able to predict. You have fire in you, Clara. Most people look at me and see a bank account or a monster. You look at me and see a target. I find that intoxicating." He stepped back, gesturing toward the bedroom. "The dress is on the bed. Put it on. We leave in an hour. And Clara, if you try to run or if you try to record a single word tonight, I won't just destroy your career. I'll make sure your father spends the rest of his life in a legal nightmare he can't wake up from. Play the part and I might just give you the ending you're looking for." I walked into the bedroom, my legs feeling like lead. On the bed was a gown of crimson silk, draped in diamonds that looked like fallen stars. I put it on, the fabric clinging to my curves like a second skin. When I walked back out, Alistair was waiting by the bar. He stopped mid-pour, his glass suspended in the air. His gaze traveled from my heels to my throat, and for the first time the executioner looked stunned. The hunger in his eyes was no longer cold. It was a wildfire. "Fix your hair," he said, his voice rough. He walked over, his hand steady as he pulled a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His touch lingered, his fingers brushing against the sensitive skin of my neck. "Remember," he whispered, "to the world I am the man who loves you. But in this room, you are the woman who belongs to me. Don't forget which version is real. As we stepped into the elevator, the reflection in the gold-plated mirrors showed a perfect couple. A powerful billionaire and his beautiful bride-to-be. But as the doors closed, I looked at the hidden camera pin I had tucked into my clutch. I had a choice. I could get the story that would destroy him, or I could lose myself in the dark obsession of the man who had already seen through my mask. The gala was a blur of flashbulbs and fake laughter. Alistair's arm was around my waist the entire time, his hand splayed across my back, claiming me in front of the world's most powerful people. Every time he whispered "darling" into my ear, I felt a shiver of fear and desire. But then I saw him. Across the room, talking to Julian Vane. It was the man who had actually betrayed my father. The man Alistair was supposedly working with. The story was changing, the players were moving, and as Alistair pulled me closer for a dance, I realized that I wasn't the only one with a secret identity. In this world of monsters, Alistair Thorne might be the only one trying to keep me alive. The air in the ballroom was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive lies. I was swirling in Alistair's arms, the crimson silk of my dress snapping like a flame against his black tuxedo. To anyone watching, we were the perfect image of a power couple. But every time his hand tightened on my waist, I felt the invisible leash he had wrapped around my life. "You're distracted, Clara," Alistair murmured, his breath ghosting over my ear as the violins reached a crescendo. A fiancée should be looking at her future husband, not scanning the room for a getaway exit. "I'm looking at the man who actually destroyed my father," I hissed back, my eyes locked on a figure by the champagne fountain. It was Leo Sterling. He had been my father's CFO, the trusted friend, who had disappeared with the offshore accounts the night the company collapsed. Seeing him here, dressed in silk and laughing with the elite, made my blood boil with a heat that even Alistair couldn't match. "Sterling is a rat," Alistair said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register. "He's been hiding under Julian Vane's wing for 3 years. Why do you think I forced this merger, Clara? Why do you think I brought you here?" I pulled back slightly, my heart skipping a beat. "You knew he'd be here? You used me as bait." "I used us both," Alistair corrected, his gaze turning predatory as he spotted Sterling looking our way. "He knows your face. He knows you're the only one who can put him in a cell. Watch. The rat is about to scurry." Sure enough, the moment Leo Sterling caught my eye, his glass shook. He turned and vanished through the terrace doors. "Stay here," Alistair commanded, his hand dropping from my waist. "Do not move from this spot." But I wasn't the submissive assistant anymore. I was a daughter with 7 years of rage burning in her veins. The moment Alistair was intercepted by a group of investors, I slipped through the crowd and followed Sterling into the moonlit gardens of the hotel. The humidity felt like a wet blanket, but I didn't care. I found him near a stone fountain, his face pale in the moonlight. "Clara," he gasped, his voice trembling. "You're supposed to be dead. Or at least gone." "I'm very much alive, Leo," I said, stepping into the light, my hidden camera pin recording every twitch of his guilty face. "And I want the accounts. I want the proof that you framed my father." Leo's fear suddenly vanished, replaced by a cruel, desperate smile. He reached into his jacket and my heart plummeted. He didn't pull out a wallet. He pulled out a small, snub-nosed revolver. "I've worked too hard to let a little girl with a grudge ruin me," he sneered, stepping toward me. "Alistair Thorne might think he owns you, but a dead fiancé is just a tragedy. A tragic accident in a foreign country. No one will ever find the body in this humidity." I backed away, the edge of the fountain pressing into my spine. "Alistair will hunt you to the ends of the earth." "Alistair is a businessman," Leo laughed, his finger tightening on the trigger. "He'll find another girl. Another company. He doesn't love." A shadow suddenly loomed over the garden wall. It wasn't a man, it was a force of nature. Before Leo could finish his sentence, a hand like a vice gripped his wrist, twisting it upward with a sickening crack. The gun fired into the air, the sound muffled by the distant roar of the city, and then it clattered to the marble floor. Alistair didn't just hit him. He dismantled him. In 3 seconds the executioner had the traitor pinned against the fountain, his forearm crushed against Leo's throat. Alistair's face was no longer beautiful. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated violence. "You touched what is mine," Alistair whispered, and the sound was more terrifying than the gunshot. "Alistair, wait." Leo wheezed, his eyes bulging. "I can give you the vein accounts. I can make you the richest man in Asia." "I don't want your money, Leo," Alistair hissed, his grip tightening until Leo's face turned purple. "I want you to understand one thing before you spend the rest of your life in a hole. You didn't just steal from a company. You threatened the only woman who makes my heart beat. And for that, there is no price high enough." I stood there, frozen, watching the man I was supposed to expose turn into a monster to protect me. Alistair looked back at me, his eyes glowing with a dark, obsessive light. "Did he touch you, Clara?" he asked, his voice shaking with a suppressed rage. "No," I whispered. "No, I'm okay." He let go of Leo, who slumped to the ground like a discarded rag. Alistair's security team appeared from the shadows, dragging Leo away into the darkness. Alistair walked toward me, his tuxedo shirt torn at the collar, his breathing heavy. He didn't check for wounds. He grabbed me by the waist and pulled me flush against him, his lips crashing onto mine in a kiss that tasted of salt, adrenaline, and a decade of loneliness. It wasn't a romantic kiss. It was a claim. It was the executioner marking his territory. "You disobeyed me," he growled against my lips, his hands tangled in my hair. "You almost got yourself killed for a story." "It's not a story anymore, Alistair," I whispered, my hands gripping his shoulders, my own obsession finally matching his. "No," he agreed, his eyes locking onto mine. "It's a war. And from this moment on you aren't an assistant and you aren't a journalist. You're my queen. And I will burn this city to the ground before I let anyone else look at you." He picked me up in his arms and carried me back toward the hotel, leaving the shattered pieces of my old life in the garden. The executioner had found his heart, and I had found the only man dangerous enough to love me. The kiss in the garden had changed everything. The air between us was no longer cold. It was thick with a heavy, desperate heat. Alistair didn't let go of my hand as we returned to the penthouse. He moved with a quiet, lethal intensity, locking the doors behind us and throwing his torn tuxedo jacket onto the floor. "The accounts Leo Sterling had, they're being decrypted as we speak," Alistair said, his voice low as he poured 2 fingers of amber scotch. He didn't offer me a glass. He just looked at me, his icy blue eyes softened by something that looked dangerously like love. "By morning your father's name will be cleared. The world will know he was a victim, not a thief." I should have felt a rush of victory. I should have been celebrating the end of my 7-year nightmare. But as I looked at Alistair, I felt a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. "Why did you do it, Alistair? You're the executioner. You don't do things out of the goodness of your heart. What's the catch?" He set the glass down on the obsidian desk and walked toward me. He didn't stop until his chest was inches from mine. "The catch is that I've spent my whole life destroying things to build my empire. But when I look at you, Clara, I don't want to destroy. I want to keep. You're the only piece of my life that isn't made of glass and steel." He reached out to touch my cheek, but before his fingers could graze my skin, my phone buzzed in my clutch. It was an encrypted message from my contact at the news agency, the one who had been helping me dig into the Thorne family's history. I pulled it out, my heart hammering. "Claire, stop. Get out of there now. I found the original bank transfers for your father's collapse. It wasn't just Leo Sterling. Sterling was a puppet. The money didn't go to Julian Vane. It went to a shell company owned by Arthur Thorne. Arthur Thorne. Alistair's father." The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the blood rushing in my ears. I looked up at Alistair, my eyes wide with a new, sharper kind of pain. Your father, I whispered, the words feeling like shards of glass. Your father was the one who funded Sterling. Your father is the reason my father died in a hospital bed with a broken heart. Alistair didn't flinch. He didn't look surprised. He just stood there, his face returning to that cold, clinical mask of the executioner. I know, he said softly. The word hit me harder than a physical blow. You knew. You knew your family destroyed mine and you still brought me here? You still touched me? You still made me play this sick game of fiancé and assistant. I found out 3 weeks ago, Alistair said, taking a step toward me. That's why I hunted Sterling down. That's why I forced the merger. I was trying to undo the damage my father did. I was trying to pay a debt I didn't even know I owed. You can't pay for a life, Alistair. I screamed, the tears finally breaking through. You can't buy back the years I spent cleaning floors or the nights my father cried because he couldn't provide for us. You're just like him. You think everything has a price tag. You think you can buy my forgiveness with a silk dress and a diamond ring. I don't want your forgiveness, Clara, he growled, his own voice cracking. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm but desperate. I want your future. My father is a ghost. He's been dead for 5 years. I'm not him. I am the man who is giving you everything back. You're giving me back a life you helped steal. I pushed him away, my breath coming in jagged gasps. If I publish the story now, it won't just destroy Sterling. It will destroy the Thorn Group. It will destroy you. All the headlines will say the executioner's empire was built on a foundation of blood and betrayal. Alistair stood still, his arms falling to his sides. He looked at the laptop on his desk, the one containing the decrypted files that could either clear my father or bury Alistair forever. Then do it, he said. I froze. What? Publish it, he repeated, his voice devoid of emotion. The files are right there. Send them to your editor. Ruin me. Take the revenge you've been starving for. I won't stop you. I won't even sue you. If the price of your peace is my empire, then take it. It's a bargain I'm willing to make. He walked to the window, his back to me, looking out at the glittering lights of Singapore. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner's blade to fall. I walked to the desk. My hand hovered over the keyboard. My finger was inches from the send button. This was it. This was the moment I had lived for. I could see the headlines in my mind. I could see the justice for my father. But then I looked at Alistair's reflection in the glass. I saw the man who had shielded me from a bullet. I saw the man who had kept my secret even when it was a threat to him. I saw the boy who had inherited a throne of lies and was trying to turn it into something real. The choice felt like a velvet noose. If I saved my father's memory, I would lose the only man I had ever truly loved. If I saved Alistair, I would be a traitor to my own blood. The clock on the wall ticked, each second feeling like a heartbeat. I looked at the send button, then at Alistair. Alistair, I whispered. He didn't turn around. Just do it, Clara. End it. I took a deep breath, my eyes blurring with tears, and my finger descended toward the keys. The silence in the room was so heavy I could hear the rain tapping against the glass like a million tiny heartbeats. My finger hovered over the send button, the key to the justice I had craved for 7 long, bitter years. All I had to do was press down, and the Thorn Empire would crumble into the sea. Alistair stood by the window, a silhouette of frozen grief, waiting for me to pull the trigger. I looked at the screen, then at him. I remembered my father's face. Not the face of the broken man in the hospital, but the face of the man who used to tell me that the truth was the only thing worth more than gold. I didn't press send. Instead, I hit select all, and then delete. The files vanished into the digital void. The evidence against the Thorn Group was gone. I stood up, my legs trembling, and walked toward the man who had been my enemy, my boss, and my obsession. Alistair, I whispered. He turned slowly, his eyes wide with a shock that stripped away every ounce of his executioner mask. He looked at the empty screen, then back at me. Why? You had everything. You could have walked away a hero. You could have destroyed the family that destroyed yours. Justice isn't a pile of rubble, Alistair, I said, my voice finally steady. Destroying you won't bring my father back. And it won't change the fact that you aren't your father. You spent years trying to fix his mistakes in the dark. If I published that, the world would only see the sins of the past, not the man standing in front of me now. I stopped inches from him, my hand rising to touch the scar on his jaw, the one he got protecting me in the garden. My father loved the truth. And the truth is, I love you more than I hate your name. Alistair let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a lifetime. He pulled me into his arms, his grip so fierce it felt like he was trying to merge our souls. He buried his face in my neck, and for the first time the powerful Alistair Thorne was shaking. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. I'll rebuild your father's company. I'll make sure his name is synonymous with honor. I'll be the man you deserve, Clara. Not the executioner. Just, your Alistair. 6 months later, the Thorne Tower was still a needle of glass in the sky, but the air inside was different. The executioner had stepped down as CEO, handing the reins to a board of ethics, and dedicated his fortune to a foundation for families ruined by corporate greed, the Thorne Vance Justice Initiative. We were back in the city where it all started. I wasn't wearing a cheap blazer anymore, and I wasn't carrying a hidden camera. I stood on the balcony of our home, the sun setting over the harbor, a diamond ring on my finger that didn't feel like a handcuff. It felt like a promise. Alistair walked out behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. He looked at the city he used to own, and then he looked at me. Are you happy, Clara? He asked, his voice a low, warm hum. I leaned back against his chest, the scent of sandalwood and home surrounding me. I'm at peace, Alistair. And for the first time in my life, I'm not looking for a story. I'm living one. He turned me in his arms, his eyes burning with that same dark, beautiful obsession, but this time, it was tempered with a tenderness that made the world feel safe. He leaned down, his lips meeting mine in a kiss that tasted of new beginnings and a love that had survived the fire. The executioner had lost his empire, but he had found his heart. And I had lost my revenge, but I had found my home. My name is Clara, and I went undercover to destroy a monster. But in the end, I didn't destroy him. I saved him. And he saved me. Because sometimes the most dangerous secret of all is that love is the only truth that can set you free. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. And remember, no matter how dark the shadows of the past may be, the light of the person you love is always enough to find your way back. What an ending. Clara and Alistair's journey shows that forgiveness is the ultimate power. If you loved this emotional roller coaster, please subscribe to English Story with Masha and turn on the bell icon. Your support allows me to keep creating these high-quality, long-form romantic dramas just for you. Comment home if you think Clara made the right choice. Check out the other stories on your screen for more billionaire drama and deep love. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the love, everyone.